Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, who's less than meets the eye, frankly. And today, we're
Oh
here to talk
no!
about
Come
Transformers
on now.
1,
Uh,
the animated
from 2000 and
Transformers experience.
oh.
Oh, no, this is a different one. This is a
Okay,
different one.
okay.
This is the first animated Transformers movie in a long time. I'm sure there's one, like, back in the day
There's one in
that
the
I have not
80s.
seen.
There's one in the
But
80s.
we're here to give you our thoughts about it. But if you have seen Transformers 1 and want to talk a little bit about it with us, you can join our Discord server or you can leave comments in the comment section of this video.
Good place to leave them.
Yeah, I'd warn people not to do it elsewhere, frankly.
I try to leave my comments in the search bar. Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. No one
What
gets
the
them.
hell?
Tanner, you saw Transformers 1
So did
with
you.
me.
Yeah.
What'd you think about the movie?
Tucker, I thought the movie was, I'll say subpar, but also like I can't get too mad at
Sure.
it, is the
Okay.
thing. It's not like, oh, Transformers 1 is awful kind of thing. It's like, a lot of people are liking this one, and I can understand why. It's got a lot of this Transformers iconography or lore behind
Sure.
it that hardcore fans would really be into. It takes the Transformers off planet, off Earth, that is, and sort of fleshes out Cybertron and how they came to be. I mean, that's the whole appeal, is that it's a prequel to what we typically see the Transformers doing. For me, I would say that doesn't necessarily work. It makes it feel a little more amorphous and like non-specific. But where
Okay.
it does work, I think, is in a couple of the vocal performances. I think Bryan Tyree Henry as D16 / Megatron is quite good.
Yeah.
I think Chris Hemsworth taking over the role of Optimus Prime is less than good.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that. And then, some of the other performances I feel like are just kind of like somewhere in the middle of those. But I thought the animation was pretty good. There's some elements of it that I think make it look a little low rent, honestly. And I want to talk about those as well. But what did you think of Transformers 1?
I was actually surprised by how much I like it, and I think that it's actually going to come down to me feeling a little bit of the opposite on some of the elements that you just critiqued, which is that I think that making Transformers, as someone who has only engaged with Transformers since I was like 7, I used to like it when I was a real kid, like a small
Tucker,
kid.
the 7-year-old boy is the target demographic for maybe the most perfect target demographic for Transformers.
But someone who, in 20 years of my not much longer life, has really only engaged with Transformers through the live action movies in the last 5 years. That was my touchstone for the series, for these characters. And I never thought those movies were that great. I like Michael Bay, but I thought they were just fun spectacles, but not much more.
Sure.
And I think what this movie did for me is actually kind of similar to another animated movie from last year, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, which is grounding the characters in a little bit more of an origin story to get me a little bit more connected to their wants and goals, as opposed to what we've seen from the other Transformers movies, sans, I guess, Bumblebee, where the Transformers are almost not characters. They're just action set piece things that don't really have strong personalities.
They are action figures for our directors or acting choreographers to play with.
Our directors, including the lineage of Michael Bay and Stephen Cable Jr.
And Stephen Knight, is that who
Travis Knight.
Travis Knight
for
Bumblebee.
But so the fact that Transformers 1 is on Cybertron, that Orion and D16 are not Transformers yet, that there is this information about the Primes and about the history of a war on Cybertron and Cybertronian culture and things. I found all that to be really refreshing, and finally to I felt like I understood where Transformers was coming from finally,
sure.
rather than like, oh, these are just some things from another thing.
Good guys, bad guys. Yeah, that's about it.
And then obviously they feel I think kind of out of place intentionally so when they're on Earth, but I found this to be a much more cohesive film than the other ones, and the way that it sets up conflict I found to be much more straightforward and understandable. Sometimes to the writing's detriment. This is more of a children's focused movie, but I really liked it. I thought that the animation was fantastic. I thought that I agree with you pretty much 1-to-1 on the voice performances. I thought there was a lot of really great action. And now while I am someone to say a live action adaptation of something is not a bad thing, can be great. This I feel is where Transformers works a lot better.
Yes.
And I want to get into all of that.
Well, it's interesting that because this film seems almost entirely born out of the opening like 5-10 minutes of Bumblebee,
Okay.
which is like the entirely CGI on Cybertron action sequences, turning the jets and cars and whatnot and flying around. And people are like, oh, they should make a Transformers movie that's that.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, it's been 7 years, and they're like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So they did. Tucker, I'm not really sure where we want to start here. Should we start on the animation? I just want to clarify my point there. It looks quite good. My only drawback for me is sometimes the faces are a little bit too sleek and shiny.
Yeah, and it's odd that they're like soft.
Yeah, they're like soft.
They're like malleable.
Because when everything else has like dents and scratches and texture to it, it looks a lot better. But their faces are like smooth and rubbery and like unchanging.
That's totally fair, yeah.
Or not unchanging. Obviously, they're
more
expressive.
changing.
They're more changing.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it doesn't
too changing.
It feels odd a little bit to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think
it makes the animation like a little at odds with itself, and like I said, makes it feel a little bit like low rent when we're doing close-ups as opposed to the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, we don't get a ton of close-ups in this movie, but I really do agree with you, and I think that one character that makes that more apparent is when we meet the character. I don't remember his name. The one surviving Prime
and Sentinel Prime.
No, not Sentinel Prime. Sentinel Prime's the bad guy. The one surving Prime that they go back and meet.
Sentinel Prime is the bad guy.
He's got some crazy sci-fi name.
Hang on, let me find it.
His face is not
Alpha
malleable. Tryon, yeah. His face is not malleable. He's got metal lips that are flat and that like open and close, like we've seen in
live action
films. Or I guess that you would assume a metal face to look like. And then I looked at that, I'm like, oh, there we go. Like that. That's a character that, to my mind, feels more like a Transformer. But I also understand the creative decision to much stronger humanize our core cast of characters by giving them more quirks and fumbles and sense of humor.
We want Orion Pax, Chris Hemsworth, Optimus Prime character to be able to do the DreamWorks face. He needs to be able to smirk a little bit and raise an eyebrow and what's going on here? Yeah. I'm a little sassy.
Yeah.
Should we talk about him?
Sure.
So obviously, I want to be clear. Tough act to follow.
Oh, of course.
For Peter Cullen. Okay. Yeah. I mean, just one of the most incredible voices and like tied into the character so much. Like he was the voice of Optimus Prime for decades.
Yes.
And then Chris Hemsworth comes along and is doing like his American accent is also, as we kind of pointed out, it seems like either he or the audio mixing is trying to pitch down his voice to maybe make it a little more Cullen-y. And it's just a tough act to follow. He just can't. He just doesn't do it. I think
he does what he can.
Yeah,
and it's obvious that he's trying. He's trying very hard. I think that with a voice like Chris Hemsworth that I've heard in so many things, though, to be fair, I don't think I've heard him do an American accent particularly often. It did feel very Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange to me.
It's not even like an American. He's basically doing his Thor voice again.
No, that's not true. Thor has an accent. What are you talking about?
Well, does Thor have an accent?
Absolutely. Thor has a full Australian accent.
He does not have an Australian accent.
100%. No, 100%. Go watch any Marvel movie he's in.
He's not like, good eye, mate.
Okay, well, sure. But he definitely has an accent.
Yeah. What I mean is it's non-specific.
It's non-specific, but it's an American accent geared towards an American audience. Yeah. And I'm hearing Chris Hemsworth's voice, and I'm like, oh, that's Chris Hemsworth. And I do think that because he's doing an accent that's not his usual voice, his vocal range is less.
That's fair.
Is less expansive.
I think that's kind of the point. Yeah.
But I do actually think that I enjoyed it a little bit more once he got to the more Optimus Prime stage of Orion's transformation, his growth, and they were doing some pitching, or he was pitching down his voice to sound like Peter Cullen. He had this like deep tone to it. Like that's actually, I think, a more impressive vocal performance, even if you're like, to our ear, we're like tickling, like, oh, he's doing it. He's doing the thing to make it sound like a thing. But before that, I was like pretty hit or miss on him. Like, oh, I hear it as Chris Hemsworth, and there's not too much else going on there. But I do think that his performance gets better as he goes. And once he's at the point where Optimus Prime has to be a more commanding presence as a leader, I think that works. And I think that, again, what this movie does for me that the other ones didn't is show that transformation, show the origin story of Optimus Prime as just a guy in this world.
He's a minor.
As a minor, yes. Yeah, they say that a lot in this movie.
Because they mine.
Yes, they do.
The bots who are not Transformers go into mines and mine energon.
Yes.
And so they're like, you're just a stupid miner.
Yeah, they say a lot. Say a lot of that word in this movie. But I think that showing Optimus Prime as not a leader, as learning to be a leader, his sense of hope, his sense of adventure that sets him apart from the others and leads him to being picked by Primus to be the next Prime or whatever. The lore gets a little messy.
He's obviously quite optimistic, so that they find a fitting name for him.
Yes,
an Optimus
But
Prime.
what do you think about the fact that this is a very different take on Optimus Prime and showing his growth into the leadership role?
I mean, I think it's perfectly fine. Like I can dig that. Like if you're going to make an origin story for him, it's obviously much more compelling to make him a little bit more plucky as opposed to how we know him as like the fearless, straight down the line, courageous, will put his life on the line for anyone else leader of the Autobots.
Yeah, but like also in those situations, less personality. I think he gets a little bit stronger of a personality here, rather than just leader guy.
Yeah. Well, in the Michael Bay Transformers movies, our personality is coming in the way of like Bumblebee or our human characters, more accurately. Anyway, I think it also a happenstance of he pales in comparison to Bryan Tyree Henry as D16.
Of course, absolutely.
So, and I think both the character storyline and the performance suffer that same issue for me. I mean, D16, he's supposed to be like the buddy to Optimus Prime or Orion Pax, excuse me, and he is a little bit more of a lackey. Like he's a rule follower, whereas Orion Pack is not that.
Yeah.
And so when he realizes the plot of the film unfolds, spoilers for Transformers 1, Sentinel Prime, not a good guy. He's actually selling out the people of Iacon City to the Quintessons. They're in Transformers 5, I think.
Oh, okay.
He's selling them out, and so D16's like, my life is a lie, and that begins his descent into becoming Decepticon Megatron.
His radicalization.
He lashes out against Orion Pax and starts becoming a little bit more brutal in the way he fights. He fights for the first time in all of this, and people are like, whoa, he's got a fucking gun on his arm. This guy means business. And then, of course, kills Sentinel Prime at the climax of the film. And him and Orion Pax have this like knockdown, drag-out fight where they're trying to kill each other. And then they end up going their separate ways. Little sequel tease, of course. And I think that Bryan Tyree Henry is just quite good. I mean,
really is.
When he hits this moment of like, Orion Pax is like, we gotta find Sentinel Prime and capture him and stop him. And don't you want to stop him? And D16 says, I want to kill him.
Yeah.
And they'll let that hang for a little bit. It's like, oh, okay. So I'm seeing the turn happening here. We're allowing ourselves a little bit of intensity in this kid's movie.
Definitely. And I think that on an emotional beat is, I mean, it's one of the only like real emotional beats in the movie, his transformation, how Ryan feels about that. But I think that really does work. And I think that I don't know how accurate this is to the lore of previous Transformers stories.
Oh, sure.
But I don't care because this is, I think, a reasonably compelling story of how two characters that we've known as mortal enemies for a long time and the biggest leaders of the two major factions, giving them a origin story where they were friends and seeing that split apart and seeing their personalities and philosophies sort of diverge, I think actually does quite a bit to invest me in both of them. And watching D become radicalized and realize he has this aggressive side, and also I think there is some sort of element of this core that he gets or something maybe corrupting him, or it also being put in the situation where everything that he has believed and followed, he's found out has been a lie. I think that's a compelling character arc for him. And Bryan Tyree Henry is absolutely up to the task. He delivers some really powerful monologues in his performance and his inflection, and I'm like, holy shit, he's like nailing this. And Bryan Tyree Henry, great actor, loved him other stuff, but I think as a voice performer, I think I've seen him in other things, but this is really is really where I was like, oh no, he's like a really good voice actor.
I mean, he can kind of just do it all. He's very versatile in that way, and he sells the D16's not taking any shit from Sentinel Prime thing, which could have been a little bit more I don't know, cringy
No,
or a
yeah.
little bit more platitudey if another performer was behind this
Yeah.
was behind this character.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about D is he does have this sort of ham-fisted arc of just he just it's a downward slide for that guy. But I do think that yes, his performance is what sells it, and it is not cringy. Where I do think the movie, in some of its other writing moments, can get pretty ham-fisted and pretty cringy in some of its humor. I don't think it's too bad, and that's I think part of the reason why I didn't
We've seen
dislike
worse.
this film.
Yeah.
It was passable to me, and obviously certainly not geared directly at my demographic, but I do think that on a writing level, both B and Alita, the other two characters of our four, are fall into that the kids movie tropey
Yeah,
kind of cringy
it's
lines.
Keegan-Michael Key as Bumblebee,
Yeah.
and he's doing his bouncing off the walls, every line's a joke kind of thing. And then Scarlett Johansson as Alita is just a sweet 75-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle. No change up, no real sauce on it. Just kind of she's reading her lines and also not in it for a lot of it. Like I was noticing there was long stretches. I mean, she's along for the ride, obviously. Yeah. There was long stretches where I'm like, Scarlett Johansson hasn't talked for a while.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know what the deal was there, but like, I mean,
she was highest paid actress in Hollywood a while back.
That's true.
So maybe she's still commanding a little bit of that.
This is truly like the Orion Pax D16 Optimus Prime Megatron origin film.
Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, I can understand. I think they do a solid job there. Action sequences are kind of a little bit ropey for me. I think, mostly because I think they are solid, but I also think there's a lot of times where in the midst of them we're just doing. I can't tell for a single instance what is going on or what's who and who's where.
Yeah.
And there are moments of that where I get completely disoriented by the action.
I entirely agree. I think I come more on the positive side because I do think that the flashiness and fluidness of the animation, I think, makes the action sequences, I think, the highest quality part of this film, of how dynamic they are and how many things are going on. And we can mix between moving and racing and stopping and shooting, all this stuff really, really fluidly. And I thought that was great. But I do agree that the visual noise aspect of this made me feel almost like it was being played at like 1.25 times speed at some points. I'm like, things are happening so quickly and we're leaving shots so fast that I can't even process what's happening. I do think ultimately it ends up, as I said, as a positive for me because I do think that they are more visually understandable just from the animation is blockier than we've seen Transformers in the live action movies, and they're more juxtaposed against the backgrounds rather than blending into a more gray color palette that I like Michael Bay, but I don't think those movies do Transformers action a particular justice. But I think that this worked a lot better, especially because we're able to intercut with some close-ups of things transforming, and they're able to use their abilities of transforming and partially transforming, I think, in more clever and inventive ways.
I think Michael Bay sort of evolves into that into some of his later films. I'll also say, to my point, my original point of this film feeling a bit non-specific for me.
Okay.
I mean, it's leaning into the Transformers lore, and I'll say this: I'm not very well versed in it, but every time I've heard about like the Transformers Cybertron comics or a series or whatever, I'm like, you don't need this. I don't need this. Like I just cannot feel compelled to care about the Quintessons and the Primes and the matrix of leadership and all this. And I'm like, I don't know, just like have them beating up some government agents on Earth, I guess. I just don't care for the fact that they transform into like sleek, non-specific future cars or whatever. I mean,
I need brands.
I at least want them to look like something rather than just like a polished piece of metal. Anyway, I don't know if I have a whole lot else to say about Transformers 1.
To the point of the lore, the reason I think it works for me is I think that it just establishes that there is a world and history to the Transformers that, again, I was largely unfamiliar with. I've seen the Michael Bay movies, but we watched those all on a weekend. Not ideal for me to internalize the story of those.
Michael Bay
doesn't care.
Does not give a shit.
But there is some of it in there, but I can't remember.
The Quintessons show up in 5, and there's always the Allspark or Energon or something in them.
Yeah, so the fact that this movie does, I think, take a obviously very different tone and approach to telling the story of this world, I think felt very refreshing to me in the way that we learn about the war on Cybertron, that Primus transformed into Cybertron and made that the planet, and there is this element of Energon needing to be mined, and that being sort of a element that impacts their culture, and the topography and transformation of Cybertron as a living planet, the fact that things are transforming around these characters and they have these roads that build themselves, and there's this history of the primes that are inspiring to D and Orion. That it made it feel more, I guess, like other sci-fi stories. Like, okay, there was a great group in the past that defeated the great evil, and our characters are looking up to those, but it's not like what it seems. It isn't particularly clever, but I do think that it was important for me to ground myself in the world and personality of our core two characters, in that watching them go to work and ride on a bus basically, and like hang out in their bunker or their bunk beds, I guess, and see that they look up to these other characters and that they want to go to the race. I'm like, they feel like characters now. They feel like people. They have a personality, they have a history, they have context, and even when it was sort of like, okay, I know where this is going. The leader's going to be the bad guy. We're going to learn a little about the history. The Quintesson bug aliens are like nothing, basically.
I mean, there are fodder to fight in the next movie. And Tucker, I totally understand that. And I think we can start to wrap it up here. If you would allow me, I'm gonna go a 5.5 out of 10.
All right, yeah, I'll go a little higher to 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I was surprised by how much I liked this movie, because I thought the trailers were pretty annoying. But from everything we'd heard beforehand, it's like, hey, it's actually pretty good. And I do agree with that. I think that the animation quality is really there. I think animation works a lot better for Transformers.
Sure.
And I think giving our characters more personality and backstory really goes a long way into making me actually like them as characters with motivations and with a history, as opposed to, I guess I like Bumblebee in the other ones because he kind of was a little bit quirky.
Yeah, he was the funny one.
But I couldn't even tell you most of the other Transformers names. I certainly couldn't tell you their personality or their differences and stuff.
Oh, Tucker, Optimus Prime is good, and then Megatron is bad.
I'll get some guys on that.
Yeah.
I liked it, and I recommend it to people, and I think that I'm excited to see where this goes, because you can foresee this being the launching point of a new animated trilogy, maybe
Transformers 1-2.
1-2. But if you liked this movie or didn't like it, leave your comments on why in the comments below, or join our Discord server, as I said, and stick around on this channel for more movie reviews in the future.
Bye-bye. Roll out.
No.